quickly became a leading branding expert in the Northwest. And I've seen a lot of, I've been observing over the years what all has been happening in that company. It's been very fascinating. And I've known Dan and his parents for quite a few years. And his dad was a pilot who flew supplies and people into the most remote corners of Africa. So Dan grew up in quite an amazing, adventurous lifestyle. He could tell you stories that would probably make your hair curl on what things that have happened. But not only has Dan had a very successful company, but people love his Easy Company band. They play in various places, and Dan's got this deep bass voice that comes out. But he's feared on the basketball court. According to Corey, maybe it was just a bad day that he had with you out there. So anyway, Dan, we're glad to have you here this morning, and Dan's going to talk on 6 valuable marketing principles from companies you know. Dan?
Thank you. Well, as I was thinking about what to chat about today, I asked Gary what kinds of people, what kinds of businesses are going to be represented here. And Gary started going through it. I thought, okay, we don't really need a discussion this morning on the latest website development techniques or some of those specific things for online reputation management. I thought let's try to find some principles, some ideas that will be applicable, kind of cross-applicable to everybody. And I thought what I would do is just kind of do a Paul Harvey kind of thing, kind of the rest of the story, with some companies that you're probably quite familiar with, and then pull out of that some things that we've learned out of it. I have the privilege of working, teaching at the MBA program at the University of Washington Foster School of Business, and also at Salem Pacific University. And one of the things that I'm always talking to the kids about is just this whole idea of how do you become a lifelong learner? How do your whole life do you keep getting better and better at what you do, rather than just kind of, okay, I finished my education, I know exactly who I am and what I want to do, and away you go. Because there's so many things you can learn if you really pay attention. And I've been very fortunate to have some very smart clients along the way. When I started my company, Gary mentioned '84, like all of us, I didn't know what I didn't know. And what I did know was marketing, but I didn't know was how to run a business. And I had some clients that kind of took me under their wing. And I mean, the first person I ever hired, one of my clients said, "Let me interview them for you. I'll help you find the right person." And so it's been a great ethic for me. One of the things that if you can flip to my quotation here. One of the things I often put on the board when I first start with a class of kids is this quote that I really like. A smart man makes a mistake, learns from it, never makes it again. A wise man finds a smart man, learns from him how to avoid the mistake altogether. And so I hope today, as we kind of talk about some of these stories that I hope will be interesting to you, you'll pick up a couple of little things that you say, oh, okay, next time I'm in the middle of the woods and I have to choose the better path, I'll choose the right one. 30 seconds just on my company, just so you know who I am and what I do. In '84, I started a marketing company. And I was not keen on the idea, it was becoming quite popular in the '80s, and it's continued now, the idea of a virtual marketing, where somebody in New York develops your website, and somebody in Dallas writes copy for you, and somebody in Chicago buys your media, and somebody in LA does your online marketing. I've just always been a believer that there's something that really good that happens when you can get a group of experts together, and they're always working together all the time. So that was my objective. How do I get somebody who can lead a fantastic graphics team? In '84, we weren't thinking about websites, but now we do a website team, and I've got TV production studios, all those kinds of things that we do. And I've been lucky to work with some big companies like Best Buy and Jeep and Volkswagen and Remax, and we did launch Select Comfort in Canada, and some of those kind of things. But the ones that have really been fun for me, the most fun, have been entrepreneurial-driven companies. We do a lot of startups. About a third of our companies are startups, and then the other 2/3 are companies who, the entrepreneur, the owner just says, we hit this level, we're successful, but I know there's a whole lot more we can do if we just had a better plan. So that's what I want to talk about. And the other thing I want to say is we got a small group here today, so I don't really want to make this a lecture. I'd rather make it kind of more of a chat. So as I share a few of these things, if you have something that intrigues you or say, well, I've got an idea, I'd like to add on to that, or let's just make this more of a conversation. So we can just chat anytime about that. The first company that I thought I'd like to talk about today is one that I'm sure you've heard of, called Sleep Country USA. So the owners, Bob and Sonny Cook, went bankrupt in Texas. They had a partner that took most of the money out of their company, and they ended up owing a whole bunch of money to the Simmons Mattress Company. And the Simmons Mattress Company told them, they said, here's the deal. You can either go personally bankrupt as well to try to deal with this, or you're great business people, and if you will go to one of the 2 places in the country where we are doing poorly and set up a company, we will finance you to get started. And so their 2 choices were Buffalo, New York, and Seattle, Washington. So they went on a road trip, went to Buffalo first, came to Seattle, and never left. And so when we met, they had 4 stores, and the owner, they were just doing the typical furniture advertising methodology. Every weekend it's a full-page ad in the paper, and this is the biggest sale in our history, and everything is 50% off, and you got to come in right now. Then the next weekend, this is the biggest sale in our history, everything's 50% off, you got to come in right now. And the next, you know how the pattern goes. And they were just kind of limping along. I happened to be in Europe with my wife. They were in Europe. We had the same hotel. We met one morning at breakfast, and we're the only Americans in the hotel. And we said, hey, we're going to Bern today. So are you. Let's just go sit in a train. So we ended up spending a week just kind of driving around. No business thing. But as always happens, you're there. What do you do for a living? And so we started talking, and oh, we own a mattress store in Seattle. Oh, I own a marketing company in Seattle. So by the time the end of the week, they said, you are going to do our advertising for us. And I was not interested at all. I mean, I was 24 years old. I was interested in car advertising and electronics advertising. Why would I go to a mattress store? So they actually called me 3 times, and I kept having an excuse for why I couldn't come and meet. And then finally, the last time, I said, all right, I'll come down. This is one of my lessons, by the way. I went down and met with them, and I walked in the store, and they explained their business model and what they did, and I said, wow. They really have something going on here in terms of their in-store execution. They were terrible at marketing, but they had a great in-store execution. And so we started working together. The first thing I did is said, let's stop doing this advertising like everybody does furniture advertising. It's not credible, it's not believable, you're not going to build a good brand on that. Second of all, I said your big competitor is the Bon Marché, this big, huge, faceless company that does 50% of the mattress business in this market. We need to be the scrappy little upstart that's trying to do something. So let's use Sunny as our spokesperson. If you were here in the 90s, remember she was terrible in the beginning, especially, and she never got rid of her Texas twang, but she was real. She was authentic in terms of what she did. I also wanted a female spokesperson because most of the, let's buy a mattress conversations begin with the wife in the house. It's not the guy. His conversation, let's buy a new big TV, let's go get a new car, that's okay. So it's knowing your audience. And then we did a little research to figure out, when somebody's in the mattress buying mode, what's important to them? How are they making their decision? And we collated that together and launched a totally different style of advertising. And in fact, Bob called all of his friends in the mattress business, told them what he was going to do, and they all told him that's going to fail miserably. There's no way that will work. Fortunately, he had enough gumption to do it. We launched in July of '93, and July was the biggest month they'd ever had, just right off the bat. I think God was looking out for me because that usually doesn't happen in advertising. Usually it's a growth thing. But it took off like a rocket. And when I met them, they had $5,000 in the bank. They owed several $1 million to Simmons. None of the inventory on their floor did they own. 7 years later, they had 55 stores in multiple states, and they sold the company for $33 million. And we've been good friends ever since, although sadly they promptly got a divorce. But the lessons that I learned, the first one was, don't fall in love with your product. So many people they derive their identity from their product or their service, and that's really important to them. And the lesson to me that was so powerful was fall in love with the business model. If you can find a business model that's fantastic and really good, that's what it's all about. And they had a great model with a product with good margins in it, and they just needed to figure out a way to, how do we become the company that everybody wants to check out? I mean, that's the goal of marketing. You want to be one of the places that people feel they have to shop. You don't have to be the very best. You just have to be one of the places. And then if you do a great job with in-store execution, you're set. And that's really the second thing that was important to me from them that I learned, is just the importance of in-store execution. They had such a great, the average close ratio in the mattress business is 20 to 25%. There was times, once we got this thing going, they got close to 70%. In terms of 7 out of 10 of the people who would walk through the door would buy a mattress. I mean, it's just incredible. Because, and most of the credit goes to Sunny, they just had a great in-store experience. They had the right products, the people treated them right, they had everything dialed down to, how many seconds do we wait before we greet the customer when they come in the door? We greet them right away before we walk over so we don't make them feel pressured. I mean, they had really thought through all the details. And when you've got an in-store execution, when you've got a customer experience that's so sound, and you have a decent marketing program, it just makes you look brilliant. So that was really helpful. The third thing was to really understand the problem that happens in business so often is we look at everybody else and we say, well, they're successful, let's do it like them. And that was very true of the mattress and the furniture business, is everybody just looked around at everybody else and everybody kept doing business the same way. And what really was magical for Sleep Country was this stepping back and just saying, what's really important to people? Maybe all the stuff that everybody else is doing is not right. They're just doing it because everybody's been doing it. And so really coming back and saying, you know what, it's not all about mentioning the brands. You know, what's important is the store, not that we carry Simmons or Sealy or whatever. It's not about who can offer the biggest discount. You know, it's about who you want to do business with and how can we create that. And the last one with them was just the power of charity and community involvement. They were the first company that I worked with that I just said, you know, we've got to figure out a way to really connect you to the community in very authentic ways. I'm not at all interested in companies who kind of do pat yourself on the back kind of fakey stuff. But what can we do that's real? And let's not you know, donate money to the Red Cross. Let's figure out, say, okay, here's a local shelter. How can we help them have some beds? And here's a local program here. You know, and even some of the things we did, I haven't worked with them now for 12 years, but some of the things we put in place, like the Foster Child Holiday Magic Program, they're still going on because they're so effective. And why they're so important is because that's what builds that emotional connection. In advertising, we're very focused on giving you all the logical reasons for why you should do business with us. You know, we have the best product, we have the best price, we have all these kinds of things. And so we're logic in our advertising. The truth of the matter, most of the time in retail, it's not logic that drives the decision, it's emotion. I mean, how many things have you bought that your mind said, that's really stupid, but you wanted it badly? You know, or how many times you've been to a restaurant and you've had in your brain, here, you know, I'm going to order the salad and I'm going to get this, and you get in there, no, I want the fries and the hamburger and whatever. You know, emotion is way more powerful than logic. And so in your marketing, as you think about it even for yourselves or things you, that's really critical. And the charity component that we did played a huge role in that. We set up an exit, not an exit interview, but a postcard program that we sent out as part of the warranty with all the bids. And on that postcard was 5 things. What made you, want to come to Sleep Country? And there was 5 things on there. By the time we'd done the charity program for a couple of years, over 30% of the people, the number one reason they came there was because we like what you do in the community. So, you just say, wow, how important is that? And what kind of trust does that build for you as well in terms of what you're doing? So every client we've done since then, we've tried to find very authentic ways to tie them into the community. And it's not only good for the outside world, it's also great for your employees, because the employees feel really proud about the stuff they do. You can involve them in those kinds of things. And some companies like Windermere will have a kind of a one-day-a-year kind of thing. I'm a big believer in. It should go on all the time. Small stuff, local stuff. It should be stuff connected in the local community. And usually the local charities are much easier to work with. You try to work with the Red Cross, it's like working with Disney. That's just very difficult. But if you go to a local shelter and they're just trying to do some things, they're very, very easy to work with. They're not going to put all the demands on you. They're just happy to have any kind of help at all. Second company, I've got a bunch here, so we'll just do as many as we have. You can have to spin down here. All right. There we go. So another company I want to talk about is one of the startups that we did. The owner of this company that became Sono Bello had been in the kind of the medical retail field, and then sold his partnership at 33 and thought, I'm going to retire and live the good life. By 36, he was bored to death. So he was watching kind of what new medical procedures are coming down. And there were 3 or 4 surgery procedures that the FDA was in the process of approving that had been in Europe a long time. And so he went around to all the agencies in town and said, try to find somebody who would partner with him to try to create a new company. Eventually he ended up with us, and anyway, we just really hit it off. And he said, here's my idea for the procedure. I know how to set up the medical side of things, but I don't have a name. I don't have a concept for how the marketing would happen. I don't know how we'll generate leads. That's what I really need, is a plan for that. So over 6 weeks, basically, we came up with a name. We came up with a slogan, a jingle, developed a website, kind of a phase 1 website, and developed a lead generation system that started with that. by month 2, and it just took off like rock. By month 2, they'd gone past month 14 on their initial performance. So they just expanded out pretty rapidly, and now they're in 14 cities. They added 2 more, so they're the largest in the U.S. in terms of what they've done. And the things that really I learned from this particular relationship that really stood out to me was just how important it is if you can to be first. They were the first people into this space, and when you're the first people into the space, you really get to define the parameters and the rules and the boundaries of how things are said and what the terminology even is, that sort of thing. And there's lots of people now in their same space, but they really got to be the first. Sure, go ahead.
What do they do?
They do body contouring, so a variety of different procedures, laser liposuction, different things like that.
Oh, okay.
But they had the huge advantage of being first. But the second thing that is a great lesson is if you're doing a really good job, and especially if you've defined the category, there's going to be competitors jumping in, and they're all going to start doing it just like you. And once that happens, you start losing differentiation. So then the question is, how do you stay first, and what do you do? And so part of the things that we did for them is we came up with trademarkable ways to describe the procedure, the things that we could still own and have happen. The third thing that's really important is just the evolution in terms of marketing. So when you have a brand new product, especially now it's a surgical product, you have a brand new product that you're putting on the market, what's going to be the most important thing that people want to know? How does it work? Is it safe? That sort of thing. But you get 2-3 years down the track, they already know these things now. So now what do you evolve with your messages? Because everybody else is in that same space now. So how do you evolve your messages? So over time, then the message went from it's safe and that sort of thing to, well, now here's why our procedures are better. Because now I'm differentiating from competitors. Here's the kinds of things we're doing that nobody else is doing. And it becomes important to localize as well. Nobody wants to do business with a chain of surgery clinics. They want to do something with something that's localized. And no matter what kind of company you have, there's great power, and that's one of the things that local charity involvement does. There's great power in making people feel like they're really invested in our community. Because everybody kind of likes to know, especially in retail, not so much in surgery, but in retail, they like to know that you're good size, because that's solid, means you'll be around, that means I can trust you if I buy stuff. But, yep.
Just a question. When you first get started or something like that, how do you convince the people, your clients that are coming in, that you know what you're doing? Mm-hmm. How long have you done this? Oh, we just got started.
Uh-huh.
How do you convince people?
How does the retailer convince people? Or
yeah, whoever's doing it. I don't know.
In this particular case, basically, we just spoke to people's idealized selves. If you were standing in a mirror, what would you change? What would you like to be like? All right. So first of all, I got to capture your imagination, and then I've got to say, well, there's a way actually to accomplish that. And then the beauty of the internet, we were talking that the internet's a wonderful thing and a terrible thing for business. I'll talk about the wonderful thing right now. It's so fundamentally changed advertising, because in the old days, go back to the 80s, the advertising was all about how do I persuade you to come to my location? How do I persuade you to get off your couch and come to my location? So that meant I had to spend half of my ad giving my address, telling you when I was open, all that kind of thing. Now the job of advertising is basically to say, next time you're in front of your computer, will you remember enough about my company, be interested enough, that you'll look me up? And so in this particular case, we weren't trying to persuade anybody to come anywhere. It was just saying, does this intrigue you? If I can intrigue you enough to come on our website, and then on the website I can have all kinds of information about here's our procedures, and here's our doctors, and this is why this is so great, and here's testimonials from patients who've already done it, etc. So I can have all kinds of convincing stuff there, and hopefully you get to the end of that and say, oh, I'm going to go find out more about that. I will go set up an appointment.
So I'm on the website, I'm looking at it. You got some coverage on some TV stations, looks like in LA, which makes sense for a company like this. Mm-hmm. Did you reach out to them and offer it to them? How did you connect with them to get them attracted to the brand?
Well, earned media, that's another word for PR, where you basically get free exposure for what you do, is an entire strategy. It's figuring out how do I go to these channels who are all looking for information. I mean, there's everything from the Oprah show on down. They're looking for content. Newspapers, magazines are looking for content. And how do I put together the seed of a story that is so interesting that they say, yeah, I'd like to talk to you, I'll put them together. So in this particular case, we found some celebrities that wanted to have this, and then we went to the LA TV show and said, hey, would you like to find out how you know, this person is going to get ready for their next movie. Oh yeah, that'd be cool. You know, and you know, we have a bunch of different PR things we do. Other people, it's always finding out what's the essence of that magazine or that TV show or whatever, and how do I create a story that they say, wow, that would be great content for us. So that's kind of how we do that. And then I was just going to talk about integrated media. One of the things that was so effective for us with this is how do I perfectly synchronize what I'm saying in radio and TV? Because you've got to have invasive media. If I've got something brand new or there's something new about my company, I have to do something that's invasive. I can't just wait for you to come and find me because, you know, as Steve Jobs says in his book, one of his quotes that I like is, you can't use focus groups to help invent products. Because people can't talk about stuff that they haven't even conceived of yet. Well, the same thing happens in advertising. If you've got a new service or a new product or something, you can't sit around and say, well, people will find me on the internet. No, they won't. You've got to go out and tell them, hey, are you interested in this? Look what I can do for you. Look how I can put this together. But with the internet now, again, like I said, it's so much easier to make the connection. It's what is that combination between using invasive media that'll come and grab my attention and kind of get me intrigued, and then using the internet to say, once I'm in the search funnel and I'm kind of interested in this, how do I make sure I find you easily? And so one of the things that made this really successful was just having a very, very tight connection between what we were saying and doing in radio and TV and print and what we were doing online. And our Google rep never ceases to be amazed at the efficiency that happens with that, because very few people who are buying keywords and stuff at Google are stopping to think about, well, how do I connect what I'm saying in my advertising with what I'm doing in terms of my online marketing. Another company that is another startup of ours that it was an interesting lesson to me was a company called ListenUP. The owner of ListenUP was a serial entrepreneur. He started a whole bunch of different businesses. He used to have a mergers and acquisition company. We didn't do their website, by the way, so if you look at it, I don't want to take any credit for that. He doesn't believe in websites, so that's another story for another time. He thinks anybody over the age of 55 doesn't use the internet. So he's brilliant in other ways that makes up for it, though. So he's a serial entrepreneur, started a bunch of different companies. He's pulled us along a bunch of them. So he had a friend that had a hearing problem, went along with him to get his hearing checked, and was just appalled by what hearing aid retail is about. You go to Sears and you sit in this little box, or you go to Costco and sit in this little box, or this little kind of place that's somewhere near the hospital, and he just said, wow, this is not so good. And then he did a tiny bit of homework and said, well, what percentage of people need hearing aids? Well, 25% of people after the age of 45 have hearing loss. You know, you get a little bit older, the numbers, it's just part of life. I mean, you get to by the time you're 70, you're at 50, 60% of people. You know, but what percentage of the public that needs hearing aids uses them? Less than 2%. So he said, okay, there's a business waiting to happen here in terms of if we can combine much better hearing health care, a much better model, along with kind of a Jean Juarez kind of style, create this a lot more fashion. So we got together, created a name for the company, created all the pieces that go with it, other than the website, and launched it in Canada about 5 years ago, and it took off like a rocket. They're up to 105 stores now, and last a year and a half ago we were bought out by the third largest manufacturer in the world. Because in the hearing aid business, your first hearing aid you make costs you about $500,000. The next one you make costs you $10. So it's all about, because it's just a tiny little piece of plastic with a chip on it, and once you've got your molds and everything, it's nothing. There's no expense at all. And so it's all about how do I get as much distribution as possible in terms of these things. And so all the manufacturers are buying retail stores, but most manufacturers are terrible retailers. I don't know if any of you work with things, they don't get it. So they're looking, so anyway, what happened is about a year and a half ago, a bunch of the manufacturers came pursuing ListenUP because the ROI and the advertising for them, we kept hearing this from different people, is about 4 times what it is for the average hearing retail in terms of for every dollar you spend, how many customers you get back. And it's just been a combination of invasive media, and again, a lot of different things. Anyway, they're up to 105 stores, the largest in Eastern Canada, and have recently been bought out. It's been a great success story. The interesting lesson that I learned with ListenUP was the importance of being willing to change your business model. They had a really sound business model when they started out, and their stores were beautiful, and they were doing well in business. But about a year and a half in, they started looking at the different stores, and they had about half a dozen of their stores that were just head and shoulders above the rest of them. They started looking for the commonalities. Well, the commonalities happened to be that they happened to be within a block of an ENT doc, an ear, nose, throat doc. So they said, oh, this is interesting. You know, we're close to these ENT docs. We're probably getting more referrals. Also, our staff is also sending people back there, so there's this little synergy that works. I wonder if we could change our model, and instead of having standalone stores, we could create partnerships with ENT docs. So in the middle of year 2, what they did is they changed the model to say, we're going to go to ENT docs, and we're going to say, look, here's the deal. We want to buy your practice. And we're going to have you come work for us. We guarantee you'll make a whole lot more money than you've ever made before. We'll put it in writing. We want to collate. You come work for us, but we'll, you know, make your life easier, get you more patients, get you more money, and you can go spend a whole lot more time playing golf. And that model has, you know, by the time they had enough track record to be able to show, here's 15 other guys, here's exactly their story. And so that really was a fundamental part of the model that changed. And so often in business, we're not, you know, you get going, you're all proud of your model, you're proud of what you're doing, and you're just not that open to say, how could I fundamentally change this? I mean, that was a major shift in terms of what they did and how they ran it. But it just was hugely successful for them in terms of how they did it. Number 3 is another Seattle company. Car Toys. Okay, so in 1995, the owner of Car Toys, Dan Bretler, started working with us. At that point, he had 4 stores in Seattle, or 6 stores total, 4 in Seattle, 2 in Portland. 2 of them were just converted gas stations, like Arco gas stations, with just that sold car stereo stuff there. We came up with a slogan and some different things, and over the next 5 years, we're very, very fortunate. It just took off like a rocket. In 98, they went to Vegas and got the Audio Video Retailer of the Year award from at the Consumer Electronics Show, and just a lot of good stuff. Dan just ran a really, really good operation, but he didn't have that marketing connection in terms of what they did, and so we put together the package of things, and anyway, it just took off great. In 2000, my wife had brain cancer, so she was passing away, and Dan wanted to fund his next venture. We'd done a really good job of capturing the whole wireless business and the wireless world, and so he was able to go to Costco and say, Costco, I'd like to be the person that sells all the cell phones in Costco. And so Costco agreed, and today at any Costco you go to, it's a Car Toys person under the banner Wireless Advocates that's selling the phones. So 3,000 employees all across the U.S. And also Staples and at the military PX. So that that whole part of the world just really took off. He needed the money to fund it. So he brought in an investor. The investor was really jittery about the fact that my wife was so sick, and just what happens in a small company. If something happens to her, will happen. So the investor said, I think we want him to get a bunch more employees and really grow his company so it'll be safer. And I wasn't interested in that. I just told him, I said, look, here's the deal. I've worked with you all these years. Every time we've needed new skills, I've hired them. I'm not going to let you down, don't worry. And so I kind of stuck to my guns, and the investor said, no, then if he's not going to make his company bigger, we're going to go somewhere else. So they went to the largest agency in Seattle, and then went to another agency, and then another agency, and then through 4 other people in between. The lesson to me early on, though, was sometimes you can be right and you can be wrong. All right. I was right in that I would have taken care of them and done the right thing, but I was wrong because I didn't stop to consider. You know what? I'm putting this new partner who doesn't know me in a box, and I'm forcing him to do something he's uncomfortable with. I would have been way smarter just to say, you know what? Okay, I'll do it. Here's my plan. I'm going to add 2 people this year, and I'll add 2 people here. Whatever it took to make them happy. And it would have, at the end, made Car Toys much happier and us much happier too. Because what happened after we stopped working with Car Toys, they went through all these different agencies, all these in-house people, and traffic has steadily declined for 10 years. So sales, because prices keep going up, sales basically stayed flat, traffic declining. So in August, Dan Bretler called me up and he said, look, we haven't worked together for a long time. I have no idea if you want to work with me, if you're mad at me because I fired you 10, 12 years ago. And I said, no, I've been, once you're part of something, you always love it. I mean, people who work at Microsoft, even if they go somewhere else, they still kind of love what they help build. So I said, I've been watching all the way along, and I have some really good ideas of what you ought to do if you want to kind of get things rolling again. And most of it relates to the fact that, so anyway, we started working together again. And I said, the key things you've got is you've lost clarity of who you are and why you should come to Car Toys. What you've done is you've switched everything to price and item. Well, price and item doesn't speak to my emotions. It doesn't, you know, you can say, hey, I have this stereo and it's on sale for XYZ, but if you haven't convinced me that I need a new stereo, I already have a stereo in my car. Why am I going to get something new just because you've got a good price? I mean, my good example is the Purple Cross. They're trying to sell coffins. I mean, they can offer to sell coffins at 90% off. If I don't feel like I need one today, I'm probably not picking up the phone and buying a new coffin. You know, it's just, you know, so if your advertising doesn't give me a reason to say, emotionally, I'm engaged, I want to do something, I'm not going to buy it. I don't care what the prices are. And so many retailers fall into that trap. I have another client right now that I'm flying up to Toronto in a few weeks to sit down with them and say, look, you know, you got all scared during the recession, you switched your advertising over to a price and item focus, and look what's happened the last 3 years. You know, our traffic counts have gone down. We need to get back to what you were doing before when you're so successful for all those years, and talking about, you know, we can make your life better, and here's how we can do it, and come in and see us, and get people focused that way. So that's been our focus with Car Toys, has been this whole notion of how do I get you engaged? How do I make you say, wow, you can do that? For instance, you know, our big focus with wireless phones right now is, you know, is this issue that if you hook your cell phone up, your smartphone up to your car, I can do all my voicemails and texts and emails all by voice. I can use my GPS on my phone for all my navigation on my dash. I don't have to have a separate GPS unit. I mean, there's you know, I can listen to internet music. I mean, there's so many great internet sources. I mean, there's all these kinds of things I can do, and the only place that can hook me up is Car Toys. Well, if I can get that message in people's heads, then when you think about buying a new phone, you think, well, look at all the cool things I could do if I would buy it at Car Toys, because they'd hook up to my car for me free. You know? So it's finding that key motivation. And does it work? Yeah. I mean, I checked the numbers this morning before I left home. Sales yesterday were 147% over last year. So, you know, when you're doing $20 million a month, 47% year-over-year sales means a lot. So my lessons with Car Toys, was that issue in terms of change, and then the issue of, in your advertising, always stop and ask yourself, what is my message that I'm saying? What am I saying in my message that's so compelling that it will make somebody say, wow, I got to go check them out. And it's almost never about price and item. It's always about what you're going to do for me to make my life better. It's going to be something about here's how I can help you accomplish something you haven't done before, or look smarter, or, you know, look better, or, you know, but make some kind of promise. And as you listen to advertising, you watch advertising, you read it, you see it online, so often you get to the end of it and you say, that's not compelling. Why would I do anything? And if advertising doesn't make you want to take action right now, you know, you're basically just wasting your time. Yeah.
In this case, do you want them to come into Car Toys? So you talked about you don't have to necessarily go across town, but is the experience at Car Toys important in the store versus online?
Yeah, I really, and Car Toys' website, I haven't gotten to that part of their puzzle yet because their website needs to be improved. But again, Car Toys is up against Best Buy. They're up against 100 online retailers where all their products are sold. So as a marketing person, I'm thinking, well, how do I convince you to say, you got to come to Car Toys? All right. Well, so I have to extract things out. So first of all, you know, if I buy any car stereo type stuff, at the end of the day, it has to get hooked into my car. So can I make a big case for you to say, you can do it yourself if you want, but electronics in today's cars are pretty complicated. Why don't you let Car Toys do it for you? We have expert installation. There's a reason to come see us. I say, another one we've got is you know, if you're going to buy new stuff for your car, new speakers, new subwoofer, new whatever, if you buy it online, how do you know when you get it it's what you want? You know, wouldn't you rather go to a sound room where you can shut the door and you can crank it up and you can try this speaker and then that speaker and then that speaker and then this subwoofer and you can try all the stuff? You know, again, it's not complex, it's not rocket science. It's just once I explain it to you, you say, oh yeah, of course. You know, this whole idea of getting your phone hooked up. I mean, I can tell you, you can go anywhere in town and buy a cell phone. You can buy exactly the same cell phone I have at 100 different stores. But the question is, you say, if I want all that stuff that I can do in my car, which doesn't cost me anymore, it doesn't cost me anymore to be able to do all my emails by voice in my car, and you think about the time I'd say, well, the only place that can hook me up, Verizon store can't do that. The guys in the mall kiosk can't do that. You know, the only place to do is Car Toys. So the job of the marketing is first of all to say, I'm salivating for the stuff you have, and then the second to say, why do I have to go see you versus somebody else?
Dan, the other thing I thought about was, I mean, there's a lot of activity around going in and getting all the information you need on what to buy, and then you take off and you go to the websites and start buying it. Because I've heard it in the store, I've seen it, they've configured it for me, they've told me what I need, and I just go and I buy it myself, and because I'm a do-it-yourselfer guy, and I put it in. How does the price differentiation, or is there any? I mean, in your mind, how do you combat that desire for the consumer to just go find it $5 cheaper somewhere else? You know, versus a car toys, which I'm assuming if they're installing it, they've got to be building that into their prices somehow.
Yeah, it's excellent. Everybody who's a brick and mortar retailer faces that challenge these days. And the answer is, I have to convince you, that's one of the reasons I want you to come in the store where you can actually talk with the people a little bit. I have to convince you that there's a whole bunch of reasons why you'd want to buy here. For instance, one of my decisions is, do I buy online, do I buy at a store? If I have any concerns about will this product work right, or is it going to be the right thing for me, I kind of like to buy it at the store, and it's worth a few dollars even if I have to, because I know I can take it back. Or I know I can come back and ask some questions and say, how do I use this? How do I make this thing work? All right. Part of the job in the marketing, and marketing, everybody kind of divides it up. Marketing basically starts from the first time you've ever heard of something all the way through until I've made the purchase decision. And it should be seamless between what you're saying on the air, what I'm reading online, what happens when I walk in the store, what happens when I talk to customer service. That should all be seamless if you're doing a really, really good job. And part of the job of marketing at all those touch points is to convince you that, you know, of course you can buy this somewhere else and maybe save a few bucks, but look at all the advantages you get if you buy it here. And you can't assume that people will just figure those things out for themselves. You've got to figure out ways to tell them that. For instance, we're in the middle of an entire redo of the in-store look, because it's just kind of evolved over the last 10 years until it's just chaotic in car toys, to try to back off and say, look, you can't say everything. Let's focus on when I walk in the store, I get these key reasons why. Good thing you're here at Car Toys, because look what we can do for you. And even if you never ask the salesperson, I'm going to see this in stuff that's on the walls and on the counters. So.
Yeah, I think Costco does that really well with like their electronics and their TV. I'll look around and get a better price, but I know if I go to Costco, I've got a 2-year warranty, I can take it back, all that kind of stuff. So that may pay a few extra bucks to shop there and get it there rather than get it cheaper somewhere else.
Absolutely. I bought electronics at at Costco for that very reason. Yeah. Just that I know that they've gone to all the manufacturers and said, look, you want to sell here, you have to take everything back. You can't, you know, think of any other place you can do that these days.
It works.
So that's a huge stuff. Yeah.
So, this is just a personal question. So when you go into any business, is your mind like always going like, wow, if they did this, this, and this, I'd be more. This would appeal to me more. Are you like always?
Yeah. I suppose there's a disease. I mean, if a person is loves to cook, you're spending all your time figuring out what spices they put in here. So we all, or you love to play basketball and you're watching the game on the floor. Oh, stupid! Why didn't you run this play? So yeah, I'm sure it's a professional disease, but I'm lucky enough that I've fallen into something that, to me, it's just a game. I mean, I tell students, I say, look, the most worst thing that can ever happen to you in your life is you get into a career and you just start working on this career and you get stuck in it. I say, the wonderful thing about college these days, it didn't happen so much when I was in college, is they're set up to give you internships. Every year, every summer, all the way through college and through your master's programs, whatever, you should be doing an internship somewhere and figure out what do you love. You're going to figure out what runs your motor. Otherwise, you're going to be the guy who just got started on a job, and then what do you know? I have a family, now I have a car, I have a rent, mortgage payment, and I can't really start over again. But I hate my job. I'm a butcher. How did I become a butcher? I wanted to be an appliance repair. I don't know.
Yes.
But that happens so often, and so I'm really lucky that I got into marketing, because to me it's just like this big chess game. It's always just kind of, well, you do this, you do this.
So, yeah, 2 more minutes. So
yeah. So I'm just anyway. I got a bunch more stories. We'll save them for another day. But any other questions or anything?
Just if a company runs into PR trouble through a product or a client, or where it's bad press, how do you help them manage that?
Well, we were talking about online reputation management is probably the most vital thing that every company needs to do, because the internet has given such powerful voice to that tiny, tiny, tiny minority who's dissatisfied. Now they can't just tell the 3 people over the fence. Now they can tell the entire world. And the problem is, when people go online, they're looking for stuff. If you run into 2 or 3 negative reviews, it's, I don't think I want to. One of the stories I was going to tell was about a company that, at that time, that very, very successful, that went bankrupt simply because they weren't paying attention to their online reputation. We couldn't get them to do it. They had a sales force, and they were doing 27,000 sales visits a month. I mean, a huge amount. But out of that percent, all you need is 0.001% of those to go sideways. And if you just leave that unattended on the web, it's going to kill you, because then people get there, I'm not doing business with this company, they're terrible. Well, no, they've got a better satisfaction ratio overall than anybody. So the most important thing is to get an online reputation management program set up where you're scraping the internet constantly, 24/7, looking for any kind of mention, anything has to do with your company, and then being able to deal with it immediately. And it's not expensive. You can set, you can set those kinds of things up automatic, and they just send you the, let's send email alerts anytime there's something you go. So set up. Most of PR damage control is by setting stuff up ahead of time. And every company should have a whole plan laid out ahead of time. What happens if somebody dies in the job? What happens if one of our employees drives through the window of somebody's house? You just should have a plan set up, and that's really how you deal with it. After that, if you're already stuck in the middle of it, the most important thing is to be careful what you say and have a very good script you work off, but to also be in communication. Because the second you go dark on somebody and you won't talk to them, you're in huge trouble, because then they'll make up their own story. If the news wants to make up a story, if you're sensational, you're newsworthy right now, they will create a story. And their story is going to be way more damaging than what the reality is if you just raise your hand and you engage. And the good thing is, it's like what that movie Wag the Dog, which was all about how the president creates these crises just to divert attention. There's something new happening in the world every day. So you could be Jack in the Box and have a disaster. You can be Tylenol and have really terrible things happen. And if you just handle it properly, you know what? People will forgive you, and you move on, and they're distracted by something else tomorrow. But going dark on people or just stonewalling them, that will kill you.